Boom, we're rolling. David, thank you for joining me.
Hey, absolutely, man. Yeah, happy to do this. And like we're talking about, it's been a long time coming. So happy to finally get on here with you.
Yeah, I think we're close to a year when I initially reached out to you. I think so, at least. Close to that.
Yeah, that's probably true. I was probably still in Florida at the time. Since then, yeah, we've moved here to Maxwell, Air Force, Alabama. So it's a little bit different. But
How do you like it there?
It's okay. Yeah, it's a different. You know, you never know in the military where you're going to end up, and it's funny that we were at Destin, basically Eglin Air Force Base, Florida, which is some of the most beautiful beaches out there, and then now Montgomery, Alabama. So good things in Montgomery. It's just different though.
Now, are you using like the base gym or do you have like a traditional gym that you go to?
There is a base gym. They actually have some decent ones. There's like a kind of like a Globo gym style on base, and then they have like a fitness annex, which is like a big high bay. Typically, I always try to lift off base. I try to train off base. To each their own. There's definitely awesome gyms throughout at different military bases. When I was at Bragg or what's now Liberty, and they have tons of gyms all over the place. But I always try to train off base personally. That's just kind of a personal preference. But
Just
and
kind of get away from it? Is that your goal with it or?
yeah, I think I try to get away from it, and it's always good. I think too often I think a lot of people in the military kind of get in that echo chamber of military. Like that's all they do, that's all they know, and that's awesome. That's terrific. But I think it's important to really integrate into the community that you are in. And so often, you'll be at wherever it may be. Let's take Maxwell Air Force Base as an example. Okay, you have soldiers and airmen that go to Maxwell Air Force Base, and that's all they do, then they go home. But you have this community of Montgomery or Prattville or whatever it may be, and I think it's important to integrate and be involved. And so, like I train at a local Globo gym, and then I also train at a CrossFit gym, and that's been one of the coolest things is meeting those people that they've been born and raised in Montgomery, Alabama. And, that's just a part I think you would miss out if all you do is eat, sleep, and train on base.
Yep.
And so that's really the main reason I guess I like to get away from it, meet civilian locals, and try to build those relationships as well. So
Cool, man.
yeah.
I want to get into training here in a little bit and let's start maybe with your I've been following you a long time. I know that you're in the military in the army, correct?
Hmm.
Was that
Yeah.
like growing up a goal of yours, or did that thing just kind of happen? Like I know friends that they're like, hey, I joined this branch because the other guys were close, and like, was the army always a thing for you, or did it just kind of work out that way?
I would say the military as a whole was always a goal I had growing up. And I didn't come from a military family. Pretty much the first person to join the military in my family, at least in most recent generations. Since then, my sister has also joined. But back to your question, I think I knew I wanted to go to college, and I didn't come from money. I mean, my family, my dad was a pastor. It was a great upbringing, but they basically were like, "Hey, if you want to go to college, you got to figure it out." And I was initially going to enlist, and then I found out about this Reserve Officer Training Corps, which is basically where you get a scholarship to go to a school, and then you have a what we call an ADSO, or payback. Basically, you join the military afterwards, and it's a great route to becoming an officer in the Army or the Air Force. And I remember when I applied for it, I applied for an Air Force one and I applied for an Army one. Actually, not many people know this, but the Air Force came back and they said, "All right, hey, we'll give you a 3-year full scholarship." And the Army came back and said, "We'll give you a 4-year full scholarship." And that made the decision right there. So, if it hadn't been for that, really, there's a good chance I would have gone Air Force. If the Air Force had come back and said, "Hey, we'll give you a 4-year scholarship," I have to admit, back then I probably would have joined the Air Force. Now, I am so glad it worked out the way it did, because I love the Army. I'm glad I went to the Army route. Um, but it's funny how things happen like that, you know.
What do you love so much about it?
Specifically about the Army, um, that's a good question. What do I love about the Army? I would say, it, look, the Army and the military as a whole is not for everyone. It's really not. And I think that's important to understand, because I think a lot of people, they either um, they join thinking it will be for them, and they quickly realize it's not. And hopefully that was kind of a deciding factor for them. But the military as a whole is not for everyone. I think it has to fit kind of your personality. For me, I think it fits my personality really well. It's, it thrives on discipline. It thrives on hard work. It thrives on teamwork and team building. Building a team to accomplish a common goal. Like, those are things that I think a lot of us just have a personality built around, and we thrive off of those things. So I guess that's part of the reason I like the Army. Is I like that it's about building teams, about accomplishing a mission. I also like the idea of traveling. You know what I mean? You get to see parts of the world that you may never have seen. I like I like the idea of getting to do cool things, do fun things. At the end of the day, at its core, I still like to believe that the Army's about being fit, shooting your guns, and it being tactically proficient, like those kind of things. That's pretty cool. If we're getting paid to do that, sign me up. Yeah, unfortunately, it's not always like that, right? It's not, a lot of it is sitting behind a computer or doing paperwork. But at its core, I really still believe a lot of it is for that. You know what I mean? To be a tactical and proficient at your job.
Yeah.
Um,
You said it matches your personality like pretty much spot on. And then you brought up discipline. Have you like I can tell, man, I've been following you for a couple of years and this is kind of the first time we've talked apart from a couple DMs, but obviously I see what the internet, wants us to see. Of course, we all share what we want everybody to see. But I mean, I can tell that you're dialed, man. You eat well, you're in the gym, fucking daily. People depend on you to get out your weeks of workouts for them. Have you always been extremely disciplined, or was this something that the military taught you, or were you raised like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, and I would agree, the issue of discipline has driven my entire life. It's probably been at the core of who I am. If someone asks, what's your strongest attribute? I would probably say self discipline. And although the Army promotes that kind of mentality and behavior, it 100% has, that's how I've been my entire life. I mean, I remember in high school waking up at 4 in the morning and biking to the local gym,
Hell yeah.
um, just to get a workout in, and then biking back before going to school before anyone was up. I mean, I don't, that still is in my. I still think about that. I was a 15-year-old kid on his little huffy bike, and it would be like 20 degrees in Pennsylvania, probably not that cold, but 30 degrees in Pennsylvania. I would put on a hoodie and sweatpants and bike. And I don't know, I don't remember seeing many other people do that. And I'm not, I know there are people that get after it like that, but that's just kind of how I've always been.
Where'd
Just
that come
very
from, dude?
disciplined. Well, I don't know. um, I guess I've always kind of had maybe like a chip on my shoulder of trying to prove something to myself, I guess. And this relentless pursuit of bettering yourself every day. And I suspect a lot of it did come from my upbringing, and from my dad was very disciplined, extremely self-disciplined. His might have been different. I remember, even to this day, he wakes up at 3 a.m. to do his devotions, right? But it's just that kind of mentality that you know you build off of if you can instill it early, I think. So yeah, I've always kind of been that way, um, and so far it's done me well. I unfortunately I wish self discipline was something I think you could instill easier in others, but it does seem to come from a very integral part of you that it's not like a skill that you can really teach, I think, easily. It has to come from within, I think.
I think you're exactly right. What are your thoughts on motivation?
I think, yeah, there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of hate on motivation. I think motivation gets a bad rap. Um,
I thought
you
you were
know,
going to go a different way with this. All right, let me
I
hear
know,
it.
I know. Well, probably a lot of people did. Um, Look, I've talked about it and posted about it before that discipline it reigns supreme over anything else. But I think motivation gets a bad rap, and this idea that like I don't know if you can swear on here, but like
Yes,
fuck
you can.
motivation,
Yes, you can.
fuck motivation. It's all about discipline. Motivation is a tool. I will tell you, motivation is an extremely powerful tool. And if you leverage it correctly, you can do a lot of great things. And you can do a lot of great things for you and for your team. If you have the ability as a leader to motivate others, that is an exceptional skill to have. And to say that motivation has no purpose, I think is just wrong. And I don't think it's fair to motivation. um, this idea that even let's say creating motivational content on social media. Although this is maybe a silly example, people like dude, if that one video gets someone to look at it and be like, "Damn, I got to go for a run." How is that not a win, right? Motivation is an incredible tool. The issue is if you become reliant on motivation and motivation doesn't turn into discipline. That's the issue, is that motivation needs to get you going, but eventually it needs to turn into discipline. Because when you don't have your video in front of you, when you don't have a team around you, when you don't have someone talking to you and giving you that motivation, then how are you going to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning? That's where the discipline kicks in. Not motivation, that's discipline. So yeah, again, motivation is a tool. It's a tool just like anything else, and I think it's a powerful one at that.
Very well said. Like I told you, I didn't think that you would go that way because I've kind of been on record, and maybe not necessarily on record, just internal thoughts that I've had with myself. Well, motivation's cheap. It's for the birds. It's bullshit. It's a filler word, but it's a tool. And I really liked how
Yeah.
you explain that. If you can implement it and turn it into something greater, like discipline, or motivate somebody to do something, and maybe they turn their motivation into discipline,
Yeah,
it's a win-win.
exactly, man. And I would say even me, I'm very disciplined. I will get up no matter what if I have, when I tell myself I'm going to, or when I'm going to go train. But hey, man, I still put on motivational music. I still watch motivational videos. I still, watch a competitor I might have or someone I'm like, man, I want to beat that guy. Like that's motivation, man. I still do that. I think you're foolish not to, you know. Um,
Because there's
but
a
hey,
lot of it
that's just
out there.
yeah. There's a lot of it out there. Use it,
Yeah.
But that's just my opinion.
Do you think do you think you're born a leader, or is that a trait that you can acquire over time? Leadership.
Oh man, that's a great question.
And you're making me feel good. I think you've told me that 2 or 3 times. Man, I'm really getting good at this, huh?
Yeah, yeah. Uh, no, it is a good question, and it's a necessary question, and I mean, it's something that we in the military have been asked many times and have researched many times, and even in my current course here at Command Staff College, it's one of the earliest things you kind of deal with is this issue of leadership. And there's different mentalities about leadership. Is if there's like a traits theory that leaders are born with certain traits. that are intrinsic to them, and then that because of those traits, that makes them a leader. There's a situational theory that a leader it becomes a leader based on situations that they are placed into. I think leadership is. I'd look at it like this. Do you watch the Olympics recently?
Yes, sir.
Right. So incredible athletes, right? Incredible athletes. The ones, these gold medalists, they were born athletes, right? They were born with a genetic capability superior to me, right? I'm not going to win a gold medal 400 meter, right? Or 200, whatever it is. But these individuals were born with that genetic gift. But are they Olympic athletes because they're genetically gifted? No, right? They were born with a genetic gift, but that gift had to be identified by a coach. It had to be developed over time. It had to be built on. They had to be placed in positions where they could excel. They had to be placed in positions where they could be identified by a coach and trained. They had to put in the time. They had to put in the effort. They had to put in sacrifice so much. And my point is that leadership I look at in a lot of ways is very similar. There are individuals that are born with certain leadership abilities, I think, but that alone does not make you a great leader, right? You have to be mentored, you have to be developed, you have to be coached, you have to be placed in positions of leadership to build your leadership capability. You don't just become a great leader because you were born one. It has to be built over time, right? And there's many great leaders out there that will never become great leaders because they were never placed in those positions, because they were never mentored, because they were never developed, because they were never coached. And vice versa. There's many individuals that will be placed in leadership positions that are not great leaders, right? So that's kind of how I look at it. I think it's some of both, right? It's that nature versus nurture. That's the great discussion regarding leadership. But I think it's about. I think it takes a concerted effort of development and mentorship to build those leaders and place them in positions where they have the opportunity to succeed.
Yeah, I agree. I'm sure you've worked with a lot of really incredible people and leaders that you've been able to follow. What are a few traits that you've seen the best leaders that have, been around your life possess? Like, what do they do really well where you're like, I want to start implementing that, or I want to be more like that?
Yeah, yeah. So what are some of the traits that we see from good leaders, or that I've seen from good leaders? I think the first and foremost is the ability to lead by example. I personally have a very hard time. I think leaders or individuals as a whole are going to have a hard time leading their organization or leading others if they cannot do it themselves. If and what I mean by that is if they are asking something of their organization or of those under them that they themselves can't do, right? So if you go and ask your soldiers to go ruck 12 miles tomorrow morning at 04, but you can't even do that, I think you're going to have a hard time leading those individuals and those soldiers. They're going to see through that. So I think one of the biggest things I've seen or that I want to emulate is the ability to lead by example. To never ask something of your soldiers that you wouldn't do yourself or that you couldn't do yourself. So um, that would be the first one. And with that, I think comes not only, I'm not just talking about physical, I'm talking about your character as a whole, right? Um, leading by example is not just hey, that's great. He can run 5 miles in X amount of time. He can bench, squat, deadlift. That's cool. But how is he leading by example in his family? How is he leading by example as a father, as a husband, as whatever, a spouse? How is he leading by example in the rest of his life? That's something that I look for as well. So I think kind of going into that line, the second thing I think is always character. the character of a leader. Um, and you can tell a lot about a leader, I think, by looking at their character. Um, do they do what the right thing? Do they demonstrate integrity? Do they demonstrate, um, selfless service? Those kind of things that I think that I look up to. Sorry, you can probably hear my son.
All good.
um, and then I think um, maybe the third thing that I look at. Well, I'll give you two more. One is the famous Jocko extreme ownership. Um, an ability of a leader to take ownership of a fault or a failure is extremely impressive. I mean, it's something I try to emulate. I wish I could say I've done that all the time. I think there's still a lot of room for improvement in my own leadership. But that is really hard, to have to stand up and say, hey, this was my fault, right? And I take ownership of that. And to build that in your community or in your organization to where even at the lowest level, your soldiers or your guys are taking ownership. And then I think the final thing is emotional intelligence. Leaders that um, have a high EQ, what we call EQ versus IQ, but emotional intelligence, I think, is very important. And being able to be approachable and communicate effectively, all those kind of things, I think that in my opinion, fall under EQ, um, are pretty important. And I think is something that maybe I look to in others.
In terms of like taking accountability and extreme ownership, I know I've seen the Jocko stuff, read the book, and this, that, and the third. Do you find yourself taking responsibility and maybe accountability for things that deep down that you know aren't necessarily your fault, but you take accountability for them because you feel like it's your job to do so?
Um, hmm. I suspect there may be times where you would need to do that. More, it would be like, I think as a leader, sometimes you not only need to take ownership for your own actions, but for the actions or execution of your organization.
Right.
Um, say you're a leader of an organization and one of your workers or your soldiers, they messed up, they failed, and because of their failure, something happened, right? You don't go to your boss and say, well, hey, sir, look, if it was my fault directly, I would own it. But you know what? It was actually Jim's. And he's taking ownership, sir. Jim's taking ownership. So I'm sorry. It's happened in my organization. Like, no, right? You would be like, hey, my fault, sir. Right now,
Mhm.
everyone, you may know that it was Jim, and Jim may be taking ownership of it, but that might be a situation where you have to go to your superior or higher, or even to your leading across and say, hey, this is me, this is my organization, I failed, right? Easier said than done. Easier said than done, right? Ideally that's what we would do all the time, but maybe not.
No, it's
Hopefully.
it's definitely easier said than done because there's that aspect of ego that might get in the way, especially with a guy of coming out and doing that when it might not necessarily be your
Right.
fault. It's more so on Jim, but it's
Yeah.
like, oh man, like do I really have to own up to this? Like I mean, I look over Jim, but this guy looks over me. So
Yeah.
I think ego can play a factor in it too, and you just kind of got to shove that and bury that under the table if you can, because it's the right thing to do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Ego or fear of reprisal is really probably the
Yep.
main one,
Yep.
especially in the military. Where you're constantly, it's constant competition. That would be a very easy one. Um, yeah, fear of reprisal. But you're absolutely right. That is the right thing to do. And I think your soldiers in your organization are going to see that. They're going to know. They're going to know. And to be honest, probably your boss knows too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He knows it was Jim. He knows. But what kind of leadership is that if you go to him and say, "Hey, sir, it wasn't my fault. It was Jim's fault."
Yeah,
So, yeah.
that's not what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know you're a big advocate. I don't even have to ask you, but doing things that you don't want to do, doing hard things, putting yourself in situations that you wouldn't normally be in on purpose to, better yourself. What are you telling yourself when it is 4 a.m. or you do have to go on this ruck and you don't want to and it's freaking 100 degrees? There's a lot of shit that both you and I do that we don't really want to do, but we do it
Right.
because of the reasons that I just listed. What kind of internal conversation are you having with Winnie being like, all right, man, nut up, let's go? What do you say when you don't want to feel it, when you don't feel like doing it?
Yeah. Yeah. That that probably happens more than you think, or more
No,
than most
no, it
people.
happens every day with me, brother. So I hear you.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean by I think people probably think like, oh, like Winnie, he's like so disciplined. It must be so easy for him to get up at like 4. It's like, no, man, like it sucks. It
Yes.
sucks no matter who you are, you
Yep.
know? You know, even Goggins is famous for saying that he stares at his shoes, right, for hours or whatever. And the same is true for me. I think the biggest thing and the biggest recommendation I can make is that be and this carries over to all areas of life, but be a man of your word. And yes, I'm talking about when you interact with others. When you say you're going to do something, but be a man of your word with yourself. And that's something that I've learned pretty early on and has worked really well. And what I mean by that is when you go to bed the night before and say you're like, man, I got to get a run in tomorrow morning. Here's what a lot of people will do. They'll say, damn, I'm supposed to run tomorrow morning. We'll see how I feel. They've given their way out. They've
You've
given
already
the
lost.
door. They've already lost.
Yep.
So guess what? When that alarm goes off at 5 a.m. and they're like, I don't feel like it. Because they've already given their way out. They knew going to bed that night that they probably weren't going to do it. We'll see how I feel. We'll see what the weather's like. Now, I think it's supposed to be raining tomorrow morning, so we'll see what the weather's like, right? Like they've already lost. But if you're a man of your word and you hold yourself to that contract you make with yourself, and you say, when you go to bed that night, you say, I am going to wake up tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. and run. There's no way around it. It's going to happen. There's no way out of it, right? So when that alarm goes off, you have no other option. That's all you can do. You have to get up. And that's what I think has worked really well for me. What I would recommend to people is be a man of your word or a woman of your word and hold yourself and make a contract with yourself. And especially, whatever it may be. In this example, it's waking up in the morning, but whatever it maybe going to the gym after work. It may be eating a strict diet, whatever. But holding yourself to that, I think, is important. Um, and then obviously, if you can't do that, then just find an accountability partner. You know what I mean? Find someone that will show up. Even I train a lot in the mornings, but there's a guy around here that we do morning workouts together pretty often. That helps me, man. Like having him breathing down my neck, I know I'm going to push it a little bit harder. So for some people, it's I think having an accountability partner as well can go a long ways.
Yeah, you're totally right with that. And it's one of those things where you said be a man of your word to yourself. If you're not a man of your word to yourself first and foremost, how are you ever gonna be able to hold up that end of the bargain with anybody else?
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know what I
That is a
mean?
good point. Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
if
I
you're
never
if
actually
you're
thought
letting
about that. That's a good point.
yeah, if you're letting yourself down first thing in the morning, dude, you're not gonna follow through on your word with
Right.
John or Jim or Joe or whoever. Like
Hmm.
you're just not gonna.
Yeah.
It spirals downhill after that. It's like, ah, I've already given up on myself, it'll be fine. Like they're not gonna sweat it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like
That's absolutely right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I think, we often see in, physical fitness, although not everything, is indicator of other behaviors and personalities that you might want to emulate,
yeah,
right? Um, because it carries over into so many other areas of your life.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good point. Absolutely. How can you keep your word to others if you can't even keep it to yourself?
Yeah. You touched on you train in the morning. I do too. I'm sure that has a lot to do with probably your schedule. Same with me, but it's also very beneficial for me to start my day like that too. Um, quick story for you. Uh, for whatever reason, man, I had one of those days where, like we've been talking about, I could not get my shit out of bed last week, one day. Like I just
Yeah.
could, like I was smoked. I was running on like 3 hours of sleep for a handful of days. And for whatever reason, my body was just like, dude, you ain't getting up. And I didn't. Slept in. I felt horrible about it and didn't get to the gym until like 6 p.m. And
Yeah.
the whole entire day was ruined. I felt terrible. I was bummed out about myself regarding the fact that I didn't get up. I had anxiety the entire day. And it's a kind of a big conversation like, when should you train? That's why I train in the morning. Is that why you do as well?
Yeah, there's a number of different reasons. Um, some of them are very practical reasons, and others are more like, yeah, mental. And I will say, you own the morning.
Yeah.
No one can, for the most part, even in the military, even if you're doing PT at 6:30, okay, well, what are you doing before then, right? No one, no one scheduling meetings at 4 a.m. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you own the morning. So that's a big thing, a reason. And what happens lots of times is I think, people will say, well, I'm not a morning person, so I'll train after work, or I'll train during lunch. But as the day progresses, right, you have a meeting that goes long. You have, oh, damn, I got to pick up groceries. I got to do X, Y, and Z. And before you know it, it's 7 p.m., 8 p.m. And you're like, I got to go to bed, right? Um, so you always own the morning. I think but the other reason, really a practical reason, is just because the way I do my training is I do my cardio in the morning, and then I train my lift in the evening. So that way I have as much time difference, for my body to recover, to refuel, and then I can hit my later lift, a lot more effectively. Whereas if I try to just squish it all into one, either I'd be toast in the morning or I'd be running out of time at night. So that's kind of the practical reason that I like to do it. And then I think the third part is like what you said, is it's really the best way to get the day going, I think, is if you can inflict if you can inflict pain and discomfort on yourself, the rest of the day all of a sudden seems pretty easy.
Yes.
And you know this, right? Yeah, that's probably how you felt that one day that you missed it. You're like, oh man, this day sucks. It's like, well, shit, man, yeah, because you didn't get that morning jump start, and inflict that pain on yourself in the morning. So
Yeah. And then I found myself purposely beating the shit out of myself that evening, where I
right,
was like,
right,
I am going to really, really pay for this on purpose. And that's what I
right,
did. That's what I did. I was like, you piece of shit. You should have gotten up and
yeah,
got your stuff in. Now you're gonna pay for this. No one
yeah,
made me do anything too. I
yeah,
was like, I'm gonna work out some brutal shit right now. And
yeah.
I did, and I felt way better, but it was still the fact I was like, you deserved that. You deserve to suffer a little bit extra tonight because you didn't do what you said you were supposed to do this morning.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Are you training fasted on that cardio?
Yeah, in the morning I will. So, unless it's like a, super long ruck or very long run, which I haven't done in a while, to be honest. But typically it's all fasted. So, the last thing I eat in a day might be at like 7 p.m. And then when I wake up, I'll have a cup of black coffee, of a cup of water, cup of black coffee, and that's pretty much it. And then I'll do my cardio, and then I'll start refueling. And then I try to get about 3 to 4 meals in before I train again. That's just what works best for me. I think I never quite understood. People are like, oh, you need to eat before in the morning especially if you're running. I don't think it's necessary. You know what I mean? Your body's fueled. If you're on a proper diet, your body is plenty fueled to be able to execute that morning cardio session at a high level, I think, or at least what works for me. But yeah, is that typically what you do, or it all depends too. If you're weight training in the morning, well, then I probably would eat something.
Yeah.
I don't
See,
know. I
I'm
don't know what you do.
I just feel way sharper without anything in my stomach. I'll eat
Hmm.
again just like you at like 7. That's kind of my last
Right.
meal. And I'm
Yeah.
different, man. I don't eat 4, 5, 6 meals a day. I eat two big ones. I eat at like noon and then I eat at 7.
Okay.
Um, Super low carb. So our diets, like I follow your shit. We're pretty opposite. I can tell.
Yeah.
Like I know you eat a lot of sweet potatoes and stuff like that. Um, I don't know. I just feel a little bit sluggish when I have a ton of carbs. And
Yeah.
then like in the mornings, I'll, 5, 6 a.m., I'll hit my weights and then I'll do some sort of circuit or cardio session at the end. So I'm usually 60 to 90 minutes total. And then it's probably not good, but I don't even eat until like noon. I don't I don't
Okay.
know. That's just me, dude. I
Do you
don't
have a
know.
shake? Do you have like a protein shake or anything, or no?
No, I should though.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
I yeah.
I don't know
I
how
don't
it
know, man.
happens, brother. It's just I've been doing it for a while now, and that's just everybody. Like I'm a coach, right? And they're like, "Well, what do you do?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't really necessarily recommend what I
Yeah.
do for you." It's kind of one of those things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Right. Everyone's different. If that's what you've done, then I would recommend continue doing that. Yeah. Because clear, if it's been effective for you, that's I would never do that,
Right.
but yeah, if that works for you, that's good.
Are you tracking your food? Like,
Um,
are you trying to hit certain numbers or?
yes and no. To be honest, I eat the same thing every day at this
Yeah.
point, so it's not like I like go in and calculate like, okay, I had another chicken breast. Oh, that's whatever, 50 grams. Like, because it's the same shit every day. So, so I guess like initially I tracked it, uh, and then anytime I deviate, I might adjust it. Um, and and I guess also depending on like what the goal is. Like obviously when I was doing bodybuilding, then you have to track everything, right, and be very attention to detail on everything. But for the most part, I wouldn't say I track everything. I know everything I'm going to eat that day, but I don't know down to like the macro um, exactly what it is. I could pull it up because I have like I said, anytime I change the diet or deviated, I would adjust it and look at it. So I have like all my diets that I've ever done, but off the top of my head, I don't know.
Are you are you human in the aspect of like you'll treat yourself once a week on like a Saturday and go grab a burger or a milkshake, or are you just dialed all the time?
No, 100%. Saturdays.
My
Yes.
man.
Yeah, 100%. Monday through Friday, and really Sunday through Friday, I'm dialed in. You couldn't really tempt me with a donut or anything. Like I'm just not gonna eat it.
Same.
But Saturdays, 100%. Yeah, I'll probably eat whatever. And
Touch on the
you know
importance of that though.
what's that?
Touch on the importance of that day, but you only have that day if Sunday through Friday you're on point. Just touch on the importance of that because I encourage my guys to do that, but like if you fucked off during the week, no. No, 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 no.
Right. Yeah. Again, I think everyone's different. Um, but I know for me, there's a physical. It's a kind of twofold. I think there's a physical benefit to that, but there's also a mental benefit to that, and it gets back to the issue of self discipline of like holding yourself that Sunday through Friday of like just staying strong. You know what I mean? Like sticking with it, and it's it's good, I think, for you mentally to stay that discipline in your diet as well, and then to have that break on Saturday or whatever day someone chooses. But typically, I would recommend Saturday or Sunday because that day, that cheat day, is not just a physical break; it's a mental break to where you can just kind of like switch off and be like, "Hey, let's go out to eat. Let's go whatever, crush a donut. I don't know, whatever it is." Um, but I think it's important during the week to stay the course, because not only like I think you were alluding to is it's going to positively affect your training if your diet's off. your training is going to be off too. You know, you can't outwork a bad diet. So if your diet's squared away, you're going to see exponentially your performance in the gym and performance running is going to be a lot better than if you're just eating like shit and then still trying to hit PR. So that's why yeah, definitely through the week try to stay squared away, and then I think it's important to have a day off, especially if you have a family. You know, maybe if I was just a single dude, like just locked in, like oh, like 24/7, 365, like maybe I could do that. But I think especially with a family, you need to kind of switch off and so just so your family can go out to eat too, you know?
Right. Right. I don't I follow a lot of guys in this space. Like I said, I've been following you for a while, and I don't see a lot of guys getting after it to the extent that you are. I mean, you're daily, you post consistently, you share all your workouts. I know you share that with a lot of your people too. But these aren't no walk in the parks. Like I've taken some of your like driveway sessions and have done them myself, and like they're no joke. Like you're gonna have to earn that
Yeah.
shit. So I know you said that a rest day is important for you. What else do you do in terms of recovering?
Yeah, well, it's good to hear. Yeah, you've tried some of them. I
It's good
tried
stuff,
to.
brother. It's good stuff. I
Yeah,
really appreciate it. Yeah.
what's funny is that's really only even like a small part of all my training is what I show. Um, but that's good to hear. I think for because it is a common question, like how do you recover? I, I have to admit, one big part of it is when you've done it for years, your body is so used to it. You know, I couldn't imagine someone who's never trained. If someone's never trained before and then they try to all of a sudden do my workouts, they're gonna have a hard time. Um, because yeah, your body's just not used to that recovery. But when you've built your body to just overcome this year after year and day after day and for literally decades, um, you definitely, I think my body's just used to recovering faster. Um, Now, it, in addition to that, obviously, is the what we always call in the military the performance triad. And so you have your training, you have your sleep, and then you have your nutrition. And if any one of those is off, you're going to see a dip in your performance. So again, your training has to be squared away, your sleep has to be quality and consistent, and then your nutrition has to be quality and consistent. Um, so, you know, people will often be training really hard, but then you look at their nutrition, it sucks. Or their nutrition is really good, but they're getting 2 hours or 3 hours of sleep a night. It's like, okay, well, you're not going to really reach your full potential or be able to recover. So that's what I would say definitely is my sleep is usually very good and consistent, and then my nutrition obviously is good as well.
What are you getting,
But
like 7, 8 hours or?
that's all I go for. Yeah. I wear like I've been wearing like a whoop for like years. And it's interesting because lots of times people think I don't know if you wear like any kind of heart rate monitor or anything, but you know, you think you're getting 8 hours, but really you're getting like 6 hours. Um, and that's been interesting seeing and kind of making small adjustments to like your nighttime routine or to what you're doing during the day in order to maximize your sleep. Um, you know, now again, when you know my son was 2 or 3 months, okay, I'm not getting 8 hours of sleep. It ain't happening. um, so you know, you kind of have to ebb and flow with life. But ideally, yeah, I think I try to get a 7 to 8 hours of sleep, if possible.
I see you're an ice bath guy. Are you doing that for the recovery benefits or more of the mental hurdle of jumping in that thing?
Yeah, yeah, probably both. Man, there's something that's starting to get a bad rap nowadays too. Ice baths. I love it.
So do I.
Um, and I like to do mine right after my morning cardio. So like I'll hit my run, whatever it may be, or hit my morning cardio, and then I'll jump in the ice bath. Um, and I think it helps for a number of reasons. One, yeah, mentally, but after a morning cardio session in Montgomery, Alabama in the summer when it's like 100 degrees, dude, that thing you can't get me in there fast enough. You know,
Hmm.
like trust me, it's not hard to get in the middle of summer in Montgomery, Alabama. But it also, yeah, I think it helps recovery. I feel better. You know, I feel like I can hit my later lift harder, and then I just don't. You know, you ever like go on a run and then the rest of the day like you're sweating, you can't stop sweating, and you know, like it absolutely stops that. But you know, I understand why maybe there's some pushback against it. But for me, and yeah, it sounds like you. Like, I mean, I love it.
Yeah, me too. Do you do any sauna?
Yeah. I don't actually. Mostly just 'cause I don't have access to one.
Mhm.
If I had a sauna, I'm sure I would use it. But I don't. I would like to though. Do you do that?
Yeah, I try to hit it 3 to 4 times a week. Yeah, 20
Okay.
minutes. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like it. They're just kind of after my session. And then I'll do the tub every morning, like first
Okay.
thing right out of bed.
Yeah.
That's just kind of how I like to do it. It's kind of like that first W, right? Just
Yeah.
hop in there. It's brutal. I live in Montana, so we're slowly approaching that time where every morning is going to be freezing cold, and
Oh
then
yeah.
yeah, dude. Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
pretty tough. So, dude, I do my best to try to not ask like repetitive questions on here, but I
Mm.
do I do like this question, and I ask it to specific guests that are like super high functioning like yourself. Um, is there anything in your life that you feel like that you could improve on, or that you're constantly putting off
Mm.
for whatever reason? You're like, man, I really should do more of this, or I should get better at this, but you keep putting it off, and you're just like, I don't really feel like it. Is there anything in your life where you're like, man, nah, I'll get to it later?
Um. Hmm.
This is usually how the responses start, is everybody thinking, so you're good.
Yeah. Trying to think, is there anything that I put off? There's definitely personal goals I have, and you know I have this like I write in a diary every day and I guess journal, and I've done this for years. And the first page is goals I have, and these are very, you know, I understand people will share their goals. These are very personal goals, and there's some goals in there that I look at because I'll come back and look at that list of goals for the year at least once a week and kind of think like, where am I, what am I doing here with this, and am I attacking this, or am I just kind of letting it go? um, and I will admit there's goals on there that I'm not attacking as I should, and for one reason or another, right? Um, so those are goals that I'm not going to share what they are, um, but there's those kind of goals. Um, I think other things I could be doing better. Um, man, I don't know. I mean, I can always be a better husband. I can always be a better father. Like, I don't really know how to quantify that, but those are always things I'm constantly trying to do better at. And you know, I sometimes look to people that I look up to in those roles, like what are they doing, to try to be better at that. Um, yeah, I don't know if there's any like specific thing I could say at this time where I'm like, one of the things I know for me, a weakness of mine, I have to admit, is like organizational skills. You know, I need to dial that in, especially here I am at command staff college, and it's very academically challenging. So, you know, staying on top of like, okay, this is due on this day, this is due on that day. Um, and some of those things, you know, those are kind of harder for me. But like training and pushing myself, you know, pushing my body and mentally, that's easy. But sometimes these like little things that are really easy for some people, I'm like, ah, man, like I gotta do better at that.
Yeah. How long you been married?
2 years, just over 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
What do
and then my
you what do you feel like the keys to a successful marriage are?
oh man, I don't know if I'm qualified to say
Usually I
that.
ask that question to people that are like, "Yeah, I've been married 20 years." But I actually
Yeah.
got you, but I actually got you by a year. Like finally I asked somebody and I got them
Uh,
by one, but
yeah. Right.
like
And I think it
what
would.
when you guys I'll frame it in this way, like when you guys are really clicking extremely good and you guys are getting along, things are going well, what do you feel like you guys are why do you feel like that's the case? Is the communication spot on or what is it?
Yeah, I definitely would say communication, as you know, like that's definitely key, like projecting out, having a plan, having a calendar, I mean, okay, we got this coming out. Hey, I need help with this or whatever. Um, and then, sharing the balancing the load, right? Especially when do you have any kids? Yeah.
Not yet.
Okay. But yeah, you'll see like that's a whole different uh just addition to the to the challenge. But having balance with that. And then I would just say, and one of the things that I always like to just preach is balance in life. And I think that is something that is not talked about or projected enough, both in life and in social media. That I don't think there's enough concerted effort to really promote a balanced life. We can talk about training hard and crushing it. And, dude, this guy's training like 8 hours a day, and oh my god, like, okay, well, how does the rest of his life look?
Yeah.
How is he balancing his mental health? How is he balancing his spiritual health? How is he balancing his family, his community? Like those are the things that we want to be emulating and I think encouraging. It's cool, man. Like if someone can train 8 hours a day and they're locked in. Like I guess that's impressive. I guess, but like, show me a dude who has a family and a full time job and is getting after it. That's impressive to me.
Yeah.
That's the kind of people that I think we need to be promoting and in that kind of behavior. Um, but but I sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. But back to the original question, I think it's finding balance in your marriage and balance in your life has, from what I've seen, been beneficial to myself and my wife.
Really well said. Last thing, man, there's definitely been a lot of good nuggets. Again, I appreciate you coming on and talking to me for an hour. I want to be respectful, but this is kind of like a personal question for me. Do you run your own page? Do you make your own content? Like it's really,
Oh yeah.
really spot on, brother. Really good.
Oh, yeah. I appreciate that, man. I really do. Thank you. And yes, it's just me. There's no one else.
Nice. Good
I
for
think
you.
yeah, a lot of people maybe think there's like a team. No, it's just me, and my wife helps.
So does
But
mine. Yep.
yeah, I really enjoy it though. That's become a fun hobby. Is just like content creation and video editing, and
Hmm.
yeah, it's just kind of a fun side thing.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's just me.
Do you run most of your stuff? I can tell a lot of your photos aren't iPhone photos, but how does that work when you film? Like you set up a tripod on your phone, or do you have a tripod with the Sony, or like kind of what kind of stuff you use in order to and then with video editing as well. Like I use DaVinci for some of my reels and shit like that. Like, what's your process look like?
Yeah, I use so anything you probably see on like my stories is just going to be my iPhone with like a tripod on cinematic mode and stuff like that. And then for the nicer stuff, I shoot on a Sony A7, which is I think a pretty great platform. Um, and then I edit typically on Final Cut. Um, that's just what I was used to. I know a lot of guys, yeah, use like Premiere and stuff, which maybe I'll move over to. But I think I was just maybe cheap, and I just got Final Cut because it's just like a one-time price.
Yep. Yep.
uh, so yeah, that's typically what we do. Um, yeah, I don't know. What do you shoot on?
A7R4.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
for like the nicer stuff, obviously, and then I'll still do like iPhone shit.
yeah,
But
yeah.
do my best. Do you have a strategy like, hey, I need to post 3 times a week or every more or like what's your kind of do you have like content scheduled or backlogged or kind of what's your deal?
Um, Man, I wish I could say I had more of a plan. It's really not that like thought out. I probably as a lot of people think, but uh, the one thing this year is obviously like every Monday I release a workout, and that has
Yep.
kind of helped structured how I kind of like approach content creation. So a lot of it like centered around that. And but usually I only post, for me, I think it's just like two, 3 times a week, maybe.
Hmm.
I try to hit like two. Um, and but mostly it's just like I don't know. Usually it's just like an idea I'll have maybe. And what I do have is I have lists for everything. Maybe you do the same thing, but I'm all about like writing down things. So if I have an idea on my iPhone, I just in my notes page, I just have like tons of lists, like everything you could think of, like best restaurants in this town, best drinks at this place, whatever. I'm kind of weird about that, but one of them is like video ideas. And so if I have an idea, like maybe I'll be in the gym and I'll be like, oh, that could be an idea. Like I'll throw that in there. And sometimes it'll sit there. I mean, there's ideas in there that will probably never come to fruition, but it's just like, then there's other ideas that maybe I'll come back and circle around and be like, oh, wait, that's that. Like that. Now I know how to finish that one. And then usually, so I'll start with an idea, then I'll like try to get the content built around that. And then it's just like editing it. I mean, and you know how it is, man. Like sometimes it sucks. Like sometimes you have like this idea that you think is awesome, and you're like, "This is badass," and then you'll put it up, and it's just like,
And nobody
like
thinks
nothing.
so.
Nobody thinks so. I'm like, dude, what? Like I thought it was cool, but I don't know. Sometimes other times, like yeah, people will like post something that was taken from like a razor phone, and it like blows up. I'm like, I don't fucking,
Mhm.
I don't get it.
Yeah, yeah,
But I think my main thing is like I don't know. I'm just gonna put what I think is cool.
that's the
If pe-
ticket.
if
Yeah.
other people think it's cool, awesome. If not, well, whatever. I was proud of it. And usually you'll as you see as you know, like if you think it's awesome, there's probably other people who thinks it's awesome too.
Yeah, they get
But
it. Well, cool, man. Listen, obviously your platform's a lot bigger than mine, so thank you once more. But where can people kind of find you? I know you do. I think you're on week freaking probably 40 something by now, but talk to me about the workouts, kind of where people can follow your journey, and then I'll get you out of here.
yeah, no. So yeah, I think it's tomorrow's like week 38 or whatever. But the whole idea was that every week I release a workout and then people could do it and then it would hopefully build like conversation community and something like that. But anyways, people can follow or message or whatever on Instagram. I'm really only on Instagram. Supposedly there's a bunch of fake accounts out there on TikTok. I'm not on TikTok. I'm just on Instagram at Winnie's World. And then I also do like programs that I release on winniefitnesssolutions.com. So, but yeah,
Perfect,
man.
man. Awesome. Well, have you done podcasts before?
No,
Dude,
no,
you're a fucking expert, man. Well done.
no, no. Actually, yeah, that's interesting because I wanted to make that clear to you because I know you had asked so many times, and I'm like, man, he probably thinks I'm blowing him off. But like, the truth is, I don't do these. I've never done them. But I think, interested in probably trying to do it more um, if there's an appetite for it. And I think there's just like some things, some ideas I have and concepts that I think this is probably the best forum to try to get out that you might not be able to get out on a different forum. So I appreciate asking me and inviting me and having me on and letting me talk probably too much.
No, no, no.
But thanks, man.
All day. Listen, stay on the line. I'll small talk you for a second. I'll get you out of here. Thank you, Winnie.
All right, thanks, brother. Appreciate it.